We come in and we're that third party that helps find the issues and helps work through a process and a plan to find those wins.
And we need a plan that is comprehensive, that we can share with our employees, and most of all, have a good time while we're doing it. Hi, everybody. Bobby Fernandez, performance coach here at Agency Performance Partners. And today we're going to talk about customer retention and dealing with team pushback on renewal reviews. And I have my colleague, Therese Potter, here with me today to have some banter with me. And we're going to talk about some fun stuff. I have been in the insurance industry for over 20 years. And I've worked with some of the top brokers in the independent agency space and working on processes and procedures and change management. So dealing with a lot of pushback. So we're going to give you some great advice here today. Therese, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Therese Potter, Agency Performance Partners Training and Operations Coordinator. And I've been in the industry about 15 years, 27 in teaching and training. I'm bilingual, woohoo. I've got a couple first degree black belts, among other degrees, educational degrees. And then I've worked at a couple different agencies with a ton of different locations in operations, sales, and service.
Awesome. Let's deal with a couple of questions that sometimes our agencies might get, right? Like, how would it affect an agency if they had higher customer retention?
It would be fabulous. And I think everybody would be on cloud nine. I think sometimes what happens is we focus so much on sales, we forget to look at the retention. And then when we see the retention numbers, we're like, whoa, wait a minute, what? Happened at an agency we were with recently. They were looking at sales and didn't have any idea what the retention was. And everybody's, woohoo, we're doing great. And then they looked at the retention like, whoa, slow down. We're not doing so good on retention.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think sometimes we forget to remember we have that front door coming in our agency, and our producers and our salespeople, they can shove as much business in that front door as we possibly can. But if we're not retaining that business and it's just leaving out the back door, what are we doing? Right? We're not
Go
stopping.
out that back door.
Exactly. So we got to block the back door. That's what retention is all about. And that's what we want to get to. Sometimes we don't have a process around that, or maybe our process might be inconsistent. Have you ever worked at an agency where maybe you feel that the goals or those kinds of things weren't necessarily communicated well?
Yes, I have several. I think sometimes the agents or the owners or the operations team have a vision in their head of what they want the agency to be, how much they want it to grow, but they don't report it to anybody. They don't let their staff know. They have it up here. They may present it to the operations team, but they forget that the staff, the people who are writing the business, holding that back door closed or, bringing everything in the front door, they forget to communicate that with them. And I think some of them give goals like, hey, you have to write this much, but they don't know why. They don't know
Right.
why. They don't know what they're trying to strive for. And I think they forget to let the individuals have goals. Each individual should have their own goals, and then your team should have goals, and then your offices should have goals if you have more than one office. Just what to do next. What are we reaching for? We just, let me grab that, and let me grab that, and yeah, maybe I'll get that.
Yeah.
But you want a wide variety of everything that your plan is and your vision, because you want your people who work for you to see your vision.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Teresa. There's nothing more frustrating than it being somewhere and not really clearly understanding how I accomplish my goal. It's real easy for somebody to give me a sales goal, but then what does that look like, right? And I think a lot of times our agencies are missing on clearly communicating that information to the staff on a regular basis, not just, hey, we have this goal. It's the beginning of 2023. We want to be here by the end of the year. Now what happens all that year long, right? If we don't make that goal a priority, and if we don't check in on that goal, what happens? If it's not important to the agency principal, it doesn't become important to the employees.
I think sometimes we forget that sometimes goals that are really hard. I think we think, oh, maybe the staff won't like that, or that goal is too hard for them. But we forget that people strive and do better when their goals are harder to achieve. And you might not, oh no, that's not true, but it really is. When you set a goal in front of somebody and it's difficult, they're like, oh well, let's try it. And then when they hit that goal, they're like, oh my gosh, we can hit that goal. But we also have to talk about ways to convince them to hit that goal. And I know that comes up in the future. I don't want to mention it now.
Yeah, no, I think that leads right into what we really want to get into today, which is how do we communicate this information to the team, right? So we had this fantastic idea. We are so excited, right? We're over the weekend. We got this great idea. How are we going to increase our customer retention? We run into the office on Monday morning, so excited to share what we have worked up in our mind that we know will drive our agency to that next level. Well, what happens on Monday morning generally in an agency?
Oh my goodness. You walk in the door and the phone's ringing off the wall and so called in sick. And there's a meeting that person was supposed to be in. And it's just a Monday. I had one of those yesterday. Yes, today is Tuesday when we're recording this. I had a Monday yesterday. My brain would not it just did not want to kick back in. And I think we all have Mondays. And it's great if we're somewhere where we love to work, which I love this job. So Mondays has never been an issue for me. But yesterday is just, I had stuff flying at me from everywhere. So I definitely had a Monday yesterday.
Yeah. So if I had a great idea on Monday that I wanted to share with Therese, what just happened to my idea?
No, Therese was like all over the place and she couldn't listen to the idea and she couldn't see it because she already was in a negative hemisphere or whatever.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. And I don't ever want, and then it makes me feel like I don't want to put any additional work on you either. Right.
Right.
I think that's where we have to understand that, when we're making these decisions about things that affect our agency and our bottom line, we need to be strong in that decision. I need to be kind to Therese and understand that she's having a difficult day and see what I can do to help her with that. But it cannot prevent my agency from moving forward. So I have to be strong-willed in that decision and know that I'm the agency's leader and I'm going to take this bull by the horns and this is what we're going to do to execute the decision. Because guess when is the right time?
It's never going to be the right time. No,
Right?
it's never going to be the right time. There will always be something. Now, we definitely try to not do things on Mondays and Fridays because those tend to be Mondays. You're trying to catch up from the weekend, and Fridays you're trying to look forward to the weekend and finish stuff from the rest of the week. So we try to do stuff on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. You can't just stop your plan and what your goal is just because of that. And there's a million of excuses. The other thing we need to realize is, what are they? They're excuses.
Exactly.
So they're always excuses. There's no, occasionally they make sense, but when somebody comes to you, oh, I couldn't do this because of this, it's always an excuse. And there's always, ways around it.
I'll call myself out, when am I going to start that diet? Oh, I have a family thing this weekend and I want to be able to eat at dinner, or, oh, it's the holidays, right? But if I don't start, I'm never going to get to my goal, right? And so we have to make that commitment to ourselves, to our agency, to our teams, to at least start the process. And I think we get backed up sometimes just making that initial push.
I took all the cookies in the house today, put them in a bag and tied the bag and put them at the very bottom of the pantry. So you're not the only one. The other day, it was late at night and I had a cookie in my hand and my 17-year-old son was sitting across from me and he gave me this look and I'm like, why are you giving me that look? Thinking, yeah. And so at the time I was like, but then I thought about it. I'm like, he's right. I shouldn't be eating cookies late at night. Bad for me. So I put them away. So yeah, we've got to set our minds that we're going to make those changes and then stick to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now is always the time to become ridiculously amazing, right? We can start making those steps. We've determined that, hey, we need to make this change. And in this case, we're talking about our customer retention and doing renewal reviews. And so, our agency is committed to that. Now we need to know, well, how do we communicate this to our team? I mean, teams are very stressed right now. People are coming in saying there's not enough talent in the industry, right? We know that this is going to be a problem. And do you really want to push a stressed team any further?
It depends. Oh, and I was going to say, wait, we're not talking about cookies? A stressed team isn't always really a stressed team. A stressed team is someone or a team that thinks they're stressed. And I think sometimes we have to look at our priorities and we have to determine what those priorities are. We've got to prioritize where we're going and what we're doing. I know tons and tons of agents that, oh, I'm too busy. And the way I saw that is, oh, you're too busy, but you've been on Facebook for an hour. I caught myself doing that. So I had to start going, whoa, wait a minute. Why am I doing this? I could be making 10 outbound phone calls in the time that I'm wasting time on social media. So we have to look at things like clients making payments, whether it's a call in or a walk in. How much time are we taking on those? And can we possibly put them on EFT or pay in full?
Right.
What other things in the agency do we waste time on that we actually could be using that time more wisely to do our renewal review calls? So you may have a team that seems stressed and busy, but you have to reevaluate what it is that they're doing with their day. We also just recently worked with a client that we gave them a weekly planner and they started putting down, okay, this is what I want to get done this week. These are the possible things that could cause me not to get them done. So they had an idea. And we actually had one of them say that they're actually going to do that now moving forward, even without APP, because they found it to be a strategy that helped them realize that, hey, these are the things I need to get done today.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't prioritize your day in the beginning of the day, that's exactly what's going to happen, right? A client's going to walk in with a payment. You're going to have a claim. You're going to have an upset client on the phone with you. Somebody's going to be out sick. There's all these things that are going to come at us during the day. So we can't stop that progress and allow those things to prevent us from forward movement. Yeah. And get the deer in the headlights moment, right? Taking it back to being able to tell the team, I strongly believe that most people really want to do what is right if they know what that is. And so I think that goes back to some of the things we were talking about previously of how are we communicating that information to the team? We may think our team knows, but if we asked all of our team members, do you think they'd give us a consistent answer?
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, most of the time, not. And even if they know your mission statement or what your values are, how are you supporting those things, right? How are we clearly communicating metrics? How are we giving the team goals that they are able to see and work towards and really monitor their own progress each day? What do you think the value would be in having a team that could monitor their own progress?
That would be awesome. There are many agents that have their teams write down. I mean, one agency I worked at, we had to write down every single person we spoke to. We had to write down every one we quoted. We had this, I had it in a binder. I mean, it has a really thick binder of everybody I spoke to. And we had a management system and we put notes in the system. So this was extra stuff that
documenting additionally
wasting time on. And so I think we have to decide as a leadership team what it is that we want done in a day and make it and express it very clearly to our staff that these are the things you need to get done. Okay, you need to get 10 outbound phone calls done a day. Well, if you're doing 10 outbound phone calls a day and something happens where you only do 5 that day, I think it's fair to say, okay, let's make sure we have at least 40 a week. So then any you don't get done on a certain day, you can push them over to the next day and get them done and be able to say, I did get my 40 calls done. I always found that I'd have a bad week and then I'd have a good week. So by the end of the month, I always hit my numbers, but it was rough on those bad weeks because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to hit my numbers. So you need to also give a little bit of time in there to make sure that they're able to accomplish those goals. And one of the big things is how are you incentivizing your team? If you're
Right.
just telling them, hey, here you go, do all these things, and it's your job, you're not giving them really incentive. You can have somebody like a Tigger. You can have a Tigger on your team that would really just be completely bouncing around with incentives and would really push the limits and show you what they're capable of with an incentive. But if you're not giving incentives and everybody's getting the same thing for doing different amounts of work,
Yeah.
then where does that go? Because somebody will be like, well, she's over there on Facebook for an hour. She's over there not doing anything. So why am I going to give extra effort and do things that she's not doing? And sadly, in our society, that's what things have come to. I mean, there's a lot of people that are Tiggers in this world. And I think our APP team has a lot of Tiggers on it. We're
Okay.
go-getters. That's who we are and what we do. And we tend to go above and beyond, not because we have to, but because it's in our personality and that's how we feel it should be done. So that wow customer service that we preach, we try to do it ourselves. And yes, we have our bad days, like my Monday, but we also move forward, find solutions, and get it done. Incentives. What do you recommend for incentives?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can incentivize your team. I mean, I think that first step that we talked about was really making sure that we clearly understand the vision. And so you mentioned it when you talked about here at Agency Performance Partners, right? We know what we're working towards. Those goals, we are clearly aligned on our goals. We know exactly how to meet those goals. We have clear visibility into what those metrics are. So now when I'm meeting those goals, how am I incentivized? I don't necessarily believe that all incentives should be financial. I think that we need to be creating a company culture with our teams where it's not always financially driven and it doesn't always have to be monetary. We want to create a situation with our teams where they are incentivized by other things, where we're reaching other goals, where I get to wear jeans now on Friday because we made all of our renewal calls last month, or we get to go out to a team lunch because we met our sales goals, or we get to do some kind of team building exercise. So I think we can't always just rely on monetary incentive. We need to supplement that with our company culture and provide some account rounding there in those situations as well.
I have a great example. We used to every other Friday do community service projects.
I love that.
So that not only helped us build teamwork, but it had us working in the community. And then we were kind of advertising for our agency in the community. So we would take things to the fire station or the police station. One of our staff members had a husband who was elderly and in elderly care. So we actually went to the facility and went in and talked to people and took balloons. So, and we went into a children's hospital and actually made, and this is before COVID, but we made Mother's Day. I think we did it twice. I think we did it for Valentine's Day and we did it for Mother's Day. And we went in with the kids and we made cards with them for their, for their parents. And we did bowl. We bowled too. We had some days where we went bowling. So we did a lot of teamwork things. But my boss got mad about something. And one day he was just like, we're not doing that anymore. And I think it was because one of the team members stopped showing up or would leave early.
Yeah.
So because that member would leave early, he got frustrated.
Rotten egg has to spoil it for the whole bunch, right?
Yeah.
But with those responsibility programs like that, if you've established some kind of corporate social service responsibility program, right? Those can be ways where now your team feels like they've made an impact, right? They're doing something out in the community, and a lot of times something that's important to them. So maybe there's ways where you can incorporate some things with nonprofit organizations within your community that they already support, or their kids' cheer teams, or just different Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, or just different ways that you can support your community. And we have to remember that, we have a lot of large generational gaps in the industry now too. And so things that maybe resonated with some of our more seasoned professionals like myself, some of our newer employees coming in and joining the industry, we need to make it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, and
Insurance is not necessarily the most fun place on the planet to be.
yeah, and some carriers actually, I found out in one of the locations I was at that that particular carrier donated stuff to cyclists.
Mm,
So I thought, wow, that's cool because somebody who's a cyclist would want to be insured by them because that carrier has that discount and has that ability to donate or whatever. So some of the carriers sometimes have ideas and have ways that you can reach out into the community as well.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I also think that we need to be telling people when they're doing a good job, right? Like, how frustrating is it when you sit and you work so tirelessly, and maybe you've worked on a big project that somebody's asked you to do, and you send it over and you get the thanks and then crickets. Right? We need to be telling people, hey, this was a really great job and this is why. And, sharing that information out with others. Hey, Therese did a really great job on this presentation. The client really enjoyed it. Great job, right? And let's give those rounds of applause and do those things for people, because they'll sit there and they will start to build that anxiety and kind of that resentment towards the group,
Right.
because now they're feeling like they're not really working towards a goal. And even when they meet their goal, they're not being recognized for meeting that goal.
Right. And celebrating and enjoying things with your staff. There's a whole different outlook in things. I mean, when you're just working, nobody really hears anything. It gets mundane, it gets boring. When people celebrate wins and celebrate things together, I mean, it's hard as managers to be friends with people. That's a whole nother blog we need to do.
Like,
But it's nice to know people and know what's going on in their lives,
yes,
not necessarily being friends with them, but just enjoying time with other humans and relationships. Because a lot of that went away in 2020, and I think we need to get back to it. I think we've forgotten how to do that. It would be a great way to do it at work with the agencies, and I think people would appreciate it so much more.
I agree. And I talk a little bit in this blog about our employees have a choice, just like our customers have a choice.
Right.
If our employees are not having fun and they're not feeling like they're being rewarded and it just starts to weigh on them, they have choices to go work at other agencies that are providing those tools for them. And that's not what we want to do when we have good people, right?
Right.
How are we going to keep those people? How are we going to build that company culture? How are we going to communicate and identify where we're going so that we know that those people are on board and we are all rowing in the same direction? But let's talk about the elephant in the room, or what I call the ER in the room, which is when we go through this process and we implement change, we are going to have those people who they won't get on board. This can be really difficult because a lot of times these people can be individuals that have been with us for a very long time. They might have helped us build our business to where we're at now. But have you ever been in a situation where maybe you might have an ER or a queen bee situation in the office that prevented something from happening?
I've had many of those, like the one I just mentioned. It's funny, I saw her in somewhere the other day, and I haven't seen her in probably 10 years. But the one that was leaving early from those community service events, caused us to lose a great opportunity that we had. But you're going to have EORs everywhere, and I think you have to take a very detailed approach on how you approach them. One thing that's great is the profiles, like the disc and the anagram, all those
Mhm.
profiles, so you can really understand somebody and how to talk to them. Because sometimes somebody who's very closed minded to change, if you make them see what the benefits are for them, then they may change their mind and start changing and doing what the agency needs.
Absolutely right. An ER can turn into a Tigger for sure.
Well,
We
and
approach it the correct way.
as a teacher who I always looked at students individually. You have to look at all the individual characteristics of all the students, and you have to reach them where they are. You can't try to get them to come to you and do everything your way. Sometimes you have to find different ways for different people because of the personalities. So that's the one thing I love to teach because I love, using index cards and using little things to touch and icebreaker cards. All of those different things are huge because people learn in different ways and people will change in different ways. So when you have Tiggers and sometimes you have Tigger. I will admit I'm a Tigger, but you know what the downside of being a Tigger is? You go so fast that you don't slow down enough to see things. So
Mhm.
it's the small details that the Tiggers will miss that the Eeyores may see.
Absolutely.
So you need to use both of those profiles together, blend them to have an experience that's amazing. So if you can get to your Eeyores and show them how change is going to benefit them, I think we can make our Eeyores into Tiggers and we don't have to lose them. Now, there can be some Eeyores that you cannot reach for any reason, way, shape, or form, and they just won't be reached. And those are the ones you have to determine what their value is to the agency, not necessarily because, hey, they've been here 20 years, they've done this, they've done that. But if the agencies always move and are evolving, just like technology,
Mhm.
technology is the huge one. If you have somebody older who just cannot do the technology and can't follow along, that's hard. It's really hard, but you've got to take the emotion out of it and say, hey, this is where we're going. Maybe you can find something for that ER to do in a different place or a different section or something. But if not, you're going to have to let them go and you're not going to have a choice because if not, they're going to hold everybody back.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And I think, those individuals, we have to be respectful about the contributions that they have made to our agency to get us to where we are, right? We don't want to be burning any bridges when we have to make those decisions. But I think the importance of the feedback loop when we're going through change is going to be imperative as to whether or not those individuals are going to be successful or not successful. We have to listen to what they are telling us. Now, that does not mean that we always have to do everything that they are telling us to do. We have presented a process and we've probably gone through a lot of planning in order to even get to the point where we have presented this to our team and now we're implementing a process. It is so important to have a true, honest, safe space for our employees to be giving us the feedback that we need to make sure that we are enhancing this process. But our employees also need to understand that unless an enhancement supports the why of why we are doing what we're doing, we're not going to be making any changes to the process. But sometimes all they simply need is a voice. All they simply need is to be able to share their frustration and for us to be able to take that in and hear that. That is not meant to be negative, right? We need to take that information that they're giving us, we need to digest it, and then we need to give a response. And if it's a response that creates an enhancement to our process, share that. Give that feedback. Incentivize employees for giving you feedback that creates additional enhancements to your process.
Well, and I think sometimes a third party like agency performance partners comes in. It helps because it's always like, as a parent, you tell your child something and they don't listen until the teacher tells them. So I think sometimes an outside source like APP coming in to do an assessment, to do those surveys and to, ask those interview questions to the staff, it really changes things because it gives the staff an outlet. It
Mhm.
gives the staff somewhere to just, pour out exactly how they feel. Most of them, usually the interviews are anonymous. So it's for us to understand how everybody feels and try to come up with a plan for the agency. But I think sometimes having a third person helps a great deal. And that's what APP does. We come in and we're that third party that helps find the issues and helps work through a plan, a process and a plan to find those wins.
Well, and you're right. We absolutely need a plan, right? We need a plan that is comprehensive, that we can share with our employees, and most of all, have a good time while we're doing it. APP has a lot of different programs that we run. I think a lot of times leaders get frustrated because maybe they don't have the support that they need, or they don't know quite how to get the ball rolling. They have this great idea, but now there's no one to toss it to help them get that ball rolling. And I think at Agency Performance Partners, that's what we're really great at. So if you need help with your processes, you need help just implementing some change, there's a lot of different ways that we can help you. So please feel free to reach out to any of us anytime, and we are here to support your agency.
Yep, agencyperformancepartners.com, and there are 3-minute videos that are great to watch. Our school is excellent. If you go on the top menu bar, you just look for the school. It's like insurance Netflix. Yay!
A Netflix of insurance. Subscribe today.
Yes, but I think some agencies forget that, you know, the staff needs training, and APP is there to support agencies and do training.
Absolutely. So we look forward to working with you all soon. Have a
Thanks.
great day.
Bye.
Thank you.